We are about to hear from some of the craziest minds on planet Earth. On today's show, we do have two amazing biohackers, and I'm gonna have some privilege in calling them that. And one is the world's patient zero on gene therapy for age reversal, and that's Liz Parish. And we do have Mel, oh, Meow Meow, all the way from Sydney in Australia, a foremost biohacker. And we are going to have such an interesting session with them tonight. Liz, can we just get to know you? Who is Liz and what do you do?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Liz Parish, and I'm the CEO of Bioviva. I'm also work with a company called Genoricis that's focused on aging eye diseases. But Bioviva is completely focused on reversing cellular aging using gene therapy. So that's our modality. That's what we like to work with, and we hope to create therapeutics for the world.
Awesome. And I'll go over to Mel and I'll play your intros.
First of all, thank you very much for having me on, Charles. I'm probably most well known for a court case that I had. So I put my bus pass in my hand, and in Australia, you can just like tap on to public transport, and the government decided to cancel it. So I took them to court over the right to be able to own the technology that's inside my body. This means Liz and I have something in common, which our desire for bodily sovereignty and autonomy and the right to choose who we are and what technologies we use, and the ownership of that puts us in trouble with authority. So I've fought a court case with it, and some of these early court cases are going to decide how do people use these technologies in the future and what right do companies have over your own bodily integrity and sovereignty. I also am a molecular biologist and started the biohacking movement in Australia by opening up Australia's first open access molecular biology lab.
Awesome. And if you're viewing tonight's show, I do want you to get some pen and paper or your notebooks because there is just so much to take in today. I'm going to play a short intro on my guests and we'll come back to them.
At DES, I presented potentially curing aging through gene therapy. So we think that aging-associated diseases are the most important unmet need in medicine, that we need to work towards a proactive society rather than a reactive society. We have a sick care system today where we wait until people get sick. Our company would like to treat you before you get sick and keep you from dying from the diseases of aging. So the biotech sector is one of the fastest moving systems. When you look at the medicine that you have today, it's over 20 years old. But medicine in biotech is working at a very fast rate. It outpaces anything that we see that comes through the regulatory system. So our goal is to help the regulatory system translate these drugs faster to humans who need them today. The new health economy will look like abundance. The treatments for aging-associated diseases will be very inexpensive or probably given for free by governments. Every year, aging-associated diseases cost the global economy over $38 trillion. That's not what companies make. That's how much money we lose on these diseases. By delaying aging, slowing aging by 1 year in a human being could save $38 trillion a year. That's a lot of money, and that's a lot of good to do in the world. My goal is to ensure that we don't leave our children with the same diseases that we die from, that we move science forward so that they can have a brighter future.
Liz, that was amazing. That was at the Digital Enterprise Summit, right?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to speak after Barack Obama, President Barack Obama, and the President of Spain. So
Awesome.
that was pretty cool. That was a special treat.
No, that's good. I'm just gonna give you take two questions from that clip. On one hand, you mentioned treating diseases before we get sick. You know, do you want to throw more light on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, today's healthcare system really is a sick care system. We wait for people to get sick and we wait for them to have symptoms of aging diseases. And then we start to treat them with really what are not very good drugs. We die still anyway taking these drugs, and a lot of them have terrible side effects. So the idea is to use gene therapy to reprogram cells to behave youthfully, to not increase your risk factor of death with your biological age, to actually keep the cells as young as possible and delay or maybe not even age those cells at all. Therefore, you're treating the master disease, which is actually aging. I believe that biological aging is a disease. If we can stop, prevent, and reverse it, we will not die of heart disease, cancer, and dementia.
That's awesome. And we do know you are patient zero in gene therapy for age reversal.
Yeah.
Do you want to just give us a bit of that experience? And does it mean you won't age again?
Well, the thing is that the technology we use today doesn't reverse all of aging, but it reverses some of the hallmarks of aging. And so that's beneficial. My company is working diligently to find the genes associated with reversing all of aging. So when we look at aging, there's hallmarks of aging, and there's about 12 agreed on now, and there will be more to come. Some of them are symptoms of some of the original hallmarks, so you don't have to maybe target all of them. But the goal is to find a genetic therapy that we inject that will last for 10, 15, maybe 20 years at a time, that will stop the aging process in the cell and even reverse it. So in 2015, I became patient zero by taking the first two gene therapies to treat biological aging. And what's interesting is, unlike most people in the field, I really wasn't doing it to live forever, although that's a great idea. I mean, who wants to suffer and die? But it was in response to my son's diagnosis of type 1 diabetes. And I was looking for cures for kids, for autoimmune conditions and chronic congenital diseases through gene therapy. And I ran into the aging research platform and met all of these people working in aging research. And so to this day, every gene that my company works on also has an application to a childhood disease. The problem is there just was no widespread, there was no human data. So we had over a decade of research that showed that we could reverse some of aging in animal models, that they would live longer and healthier. And yet we were still selling bad drugs to people that have a myriad of side effects. So really it was, me taking a stand and trying to show the world that we are waiting. And while we wait, millions of people die. 41 million people will die this year without access to these technologies, and I believe they should have access.
Look, that's quite relatable, Liz. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, and to learn that my condition is currently incurable is just crazy, And I've been trying to just connect with organizations who invest in a cure for autoimmune conditions. And I just want to throw a question to you on that. Were you diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, or was your son diagnosed with an autoimmune condition?
Yeah, my son.
Oh, okay.
And if you would like to discuss your diagnosis, we would be happy to listen.
Okay. Now I'm going to come back to that, Lara. I'm just going to play Mel's intro and then throw some questions to him. Sure.
When I started this, which was like 2012, 2013, there was maybe less than 10 biohack spaces in the entire world. Literally in San Francisco alone, there's 5 spaces now. So this is not a flash in the pan. It's been going along for years. They take a lot of effort to set up these spaces, but when they do, they're starting to provide real value back to the community, and we're starting to see things like biotech exclusive accelerators like IndieBio that take emerging companies and then give them like $250,000 US.
Mia, I believe you share quite a lot with Liz, and that is in your shared passion to enhance, the human experience on Earth. My question to you is, how have you been able to enhance your personal life with biohacking?
So I'm a transhumanist and not just a biohacker as well. And I think that that's an important distinction. Almost all biohackers are transhumanists, but not all transhumanists are biohackers. My life is shaped by the understanding that technology improves the quality of it. We have objective measures of development, and we can measure the quality of life in a society by the level of technology. And that technology can be things like politics, it can be things like medicine, and we can measure these objectively. Now, probably the best way that technology has shaped my life is a form of biology, but it's not a personal biohack. It's vaccinations. So right now, everybody who's been vaccinated is a transhumanist. They literally have technology inside their body. If we wear glasses, we're transhumanists. Liz and I met at a conference, and at that conference, an anthro, what do they call him? Anprim, got up on stage, and he was defending. He hates technology. He was best friends with the Unabomber, right? And he was giving this speech about how bad technology makes everyone's life. And there he was sitting on stage with a set of glasses on. And the irony was not lost on the crowd. So personally, I've got a few like fun little implants. So I've got a microchip in my thumb. I've got my train ticket on the back of my hand. I'm actually the world's first transhumanist. So yeah.
Oh wow!
And I've got another microchip here. Now I got my first microchip to see what the technology could do. I thought it was a bit stupid, and I still kind of do. But I said, well, until I've got it inside my body, I'm not really going to know, because technologies are something that you experience through living your life with them. So reading about a vaccine and being able to walk around in a society where you're not scared of getting sick are two completely different things. So I put the technology in my body, and I thought, wow, there's actually some really good applications for it. So I started to think about things like, what can I do with it that I couldn't do with like a ring or a button? And the two big things that kind of came out of that were authentication and activation. So authentication is basically things like payments. It's things like opening my door. And I can do these even if someone, took all my clothes, even if I was running in the rain and I got saturated, even if I hopped off a plane and everyone took everything that's mine, I would still have some identity that belonged to me that could be digitally signed. It could have a platform attached to it, but it would be some way of giving me even more authenticity than I might have with my DNA or with my passport, something like this. And the other one was activation. So sometimes, there might be a reason that I would want to use something that was in my hand rather than pushing a button or something like that. For example, if I have a hamburger in one hand and my coffee in the other, as I walk up to the train platform, it's really nice just to be able to tap my hand without putting anything down. And I think people who open their cars probably experience something the same way.
I feel like I might be cutting down on paper a little bit. I have a chip in my hand since I think 2016. The aim of my hand from what is it? Dangerous Things, the company, and it has my business card information. So you can just run your phone over my hand, and And that's really cool. And another, huge importance of the work that Meow Meow is doing is that, for instance, in the U.S., there were approvals around biohackers who hacked closed loop systems for type 1 diabetes, and hackers that were making insulin. So insulin, for type 1 diabetics is a necessity, and for type 2 diabetics becomes a necessity as they become insulin dependent. And in the United States, it's the 6th most expensive liquid, even though it costs pennies to make. Pennies. And people die. Young people, especially, they go to college, they can't afford. It's between eating, paying their bills, or buying insulin. They make a mistake, and families lose their children. I mean, it's serious stuff. And biohackers are able to make that clean product for people who need it on the cheap.
And that project was actually started in America by Anthony DiGento and became a worldwide project. And we were lucky enough to be a part here. In Africa, you guys had Cameroon were involved. And Anthony told me that before he started this project, he was rationing his insulin, so he's giving himself less than he actually needs to stretch it out. You can't do that when you have diabetes.
You lose your limbs. They'll take your feet first, they'll take your legs next, and then they'll start taking your arms off.
Yeah, and the biotech revolution, the transhumanist revolution, it has to be democratized and available to everyone. If I think somebody said, if it's not available to the poor, it's not radical nor revolutionary. And I think that all of us on this call, we're all part of the same cause, which is to make sure that as we rise, we all rise together.
Yeah, I think that's a real differentiation factor. The biohacking community is like business is business, and business is there to make investors money. Biohackers are there to make things available to anyone who wants them.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you mentioned that, Liz, because the traditional big farm, right? I mean, there is this conspiracy theory about them that they do not cure, they do business, right? So they commercialize cure and hoard it most times, And I've heard you talk about how science is fast evolving, but medicine is slower, in embracing the scientific advancements. Now, my question is to you, Liz. What challenges have you made, in the course of trying to push some of your therapies into the market? From both the government, public, religious institutions, and society at large. What challenges have you met, and how are you trying to solve those hurdles?
So first of all, we should talk about, these markets and how we're always asking the wrong companies to sort of make the change. So, we always want oil companies to put money into solar, but it's really not their business. So in healthcare, you kind of have 3 areas. You've got nutraceuticals, which have some benefit, and there's some evidence-based stuff there. Then you have pharmaceuticals, which is, generally synthetics and drugs that have been handmade, and they have some benefits. And then you have the gene and cell therapy, and it's vastly another business, although pharmaceutical industries are vastly, starting to get into it and buy into companies who are doing gene therapy because they're going to be massively disrupted. So how do you speed these things up when actually no one can really interface with the US FDA that isn't a pharmaceutical company? Because as the handshake across the board has gone, it's been too expensive. It is the boundaries have been set so high that it's called the valley of death for biotech companies. You have to get a buyout, you have to get assistance to get there. Well, I've spent the last 5 years working on regulations, and I've come up with a regulatory path called Best Choice Medicine that I believe will advance medicine much more quickly, de-risk the regulatory systems, places like the US FDA, make their life easier, and give terminally ill patients the access to leapfrog old technology and start to work directly with innovative technology. Right now, we have a pot boiling over. Think out the sides, and people who have money are escaping to something called medical tourism. There are two reasons that people use medical tourism. One is to access technology that you cannot get otherwise, and that is what we see them going for, is these gene therapies and cell therapies that they've had evidence-based animal studies around them for over a decade, but they have no access. So people with money just go and access them. The other thing that they might do is access less expensive technology. So, for instance, gene therapies that are being approved, there are now 12 approved gene therapies, and I have to say bravo to the US FDA. They did approve hemophilia A and Duchenne's muscular dystrophy therapies this week, and these are curative therapies for a disease that once had no cure as of a week ago. Those are approvals 11 and 12, so that's fantastic. The problem is they come at a $2.9 million cost, and people can't afford that. So then people just have the disease anyway and suffer with it. So medical tourism might be a route that people choose to do those therapies at a fraction of cost. So what my system does is it creates a safeguard for patients who are terminally ill, who need advanced innovative medicine, and then could keep technology in the loop available for those people who may not otherwise be able to afford the other therapies. So it's an ethical and moral use of genetic and cell therapies in a way that it has oversight that could be instituted in any government, and actually have one government looking at it now, and we're hoping that they'll institute it.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. That's really awesome. The conversation we've been having here in Africa has been how these emerging therapies, can be affordable to the African market, knowing the current economic crisis, in Africa. And I've heard you, Mel, talk about the socio-economic inequality with regards to accessibility of the therapies. I'm going to just throw one question to you, Mel. Do you think, and this is because you're transhumanist, do you think that with the coming of the UBI, era, where every human would earn a universal basic income, do you think that would help to solve the problem of socioeconomic equality, and would that help to make medical solutions like gene therapy and all of that available to poorer populations?
Great question, and I think that so on the first part, will the UBI help social inequality? 100%. The second part of the question, basically, it will raise the bottom bar to a level which is livable for every person. No one was chosen to be born. Like no one decided, hey, I'm going to be born. But as a consequence of that, they have to do certain things to be alive. And I think that is fundamentally unfair when we have technologies that could make that not have to be the case. I think that people working should be a choice. And I'm socialist to the point that I think that basic things like food, housing, and health should be covered by governments. As we move towards more abundance, medical devices and technologies will become more readily accessible. The thing is, UBI does not mean that it will fix a healthcare system. Like those two things aren't necessarily connected. For example, we did a UBI of $500 a week for everyone right now, but we didn't have any control over companies that control these medications. They can just up the rate to $600 a week, so that you then have to go and work to afford it. But you can see how this starts to have a Zeno's paradox of chasing this thing, because there's this concept of inelasticity in economics, which is that normally demand and supply have a relationship, right? If I up the price of food, people will choose a lower cost substitute, or they'll eat a little bit less. And that's called an elastic supply. Or if clothing's more expensive, they'll just wear what they already have. But there's inelasticity, and this is for things that are essential, or addictive. So if you raise the price of cigarettes, people don't stop smoking. They sacrifice other parts of their life. Healthcare is the most inelastic of anything, right? If you get sick, you have to pay what it is or you die. It doesn't matter if it's $1 million. It just matters whether you have $1 million. So the UBI won't necessarily affect that. Now, the best way I think of fixing this is governments can create financial incentives for it. Now, in India, we have seen them reject the patent system for pharmacology. Now, everyone said, oh, if you reject the patent system, no one will make drugs in your country. No, GlaxoSmithKline, they won't sell drugs to you. Bah, complete opposite. They all went and they all rip off each other's patents there. And it's one of the most innovative places in the entire world because they scrap the patents. So, and any country can do this. And by doing so, they can give those technologies at cost price to their citizens. And not every country can do it because, where is the funding coming from for the original research and stuff like this? But it goes to show that there are other ways that you can do it. There are very creative ways. Companies can form deals with countries where they might do things like offer life-saving treatments that maybe have an element of risk in conjunction for being able to use that data to commercialize it elsewhere. And sometimes countries are scared of this. There's a lot of fear from the public. There's a lot of fear from Western institutions telling countries don't do that. And we see this especially in African countries when GMO companies try and give them seeds that are resistant to the diseases of the crops in Africa. And they say, listen, we can feed your country, but you have to buy seeds from us and only us. And if I was in charge of public policy, that's a really difficult decision to make. But when there's something like people's lives at stake, I think it's worthwhile doing. Yeah. Anyway, so I think that the UBI is going to do good things, but I think that the real push comes from people demanding the right things from their governments.
And countries in Africa have proven that they can actually leapfrog technology with better thinking. The industrialization of the world happened was on the back of lifespan. And so by offering technologies that increase the health and lifespan of people, citizens of any country in Africa, you're actually increasing the income of the entire country. Plus, as was just suggested, any country that basically signs into law that people can come from other countries to access technology legally, ethically, and morally that they cannot get anywhere else would essentially pay for local people to get maybe that technology even for free down the road. So when we look at things like my area, which is gene therapy, they are the most expensive drugs on the planet. That's because all of the initial development is in monogenic space. They're called orphan diseases. There are not very many paying customers for those. But when we treat aging, it's the whole world. So on the back of the whole world getting treated, any country in Africa or countries in Africa could afford the technology for their own people.
Also, on that note, what is the danger? And I'm just as a hypothetical, if you had a disease that you were dying of and you knew that there is a cure, but it costs you $2 million, but you have the ability to make it yourself, what possible negative consequence could outweigh pirating the solution?
I mean, if you could make it and had a certain level of purity, and you knew that, I would always advise that, you just have a team around you. You definitely are good enough to do that. But yeah, if you had good technology, I imagine that people will make these things on, molecular printers in the future and, just have them available as needed.
And we've seen this Four Thieves Vinegar Collective, which is run by Michael Lawfar, took an open source drug lab from MIT, and you can 3D print it in conjunction with stuff you can find around your house. So instead of glass reaction vessels, those conical flasks, you get a tomato paste jar, and you take the lid off and you put a 3D printed lid on, and you can share the instructions with other people, and the AI will help you work out how to get from this compound to that compound. So, and this is just for pharmaceuticals at the moment, but the same things are happening in biotech, and we're going to see these gene therapies downloadable, distributable, and shareable, which is going to be a fantastic world. And it's important, as Liz said, we're not quite there yet. Part of the reason these drugs cost a lot of money is there's tons of research done into the safety of them. There is also, everywhere that manufactures them, it's incredibly strict conditions. And that's good. We want that. I want to be able to go to the pharmacy, and whatever I buy, I don't have to think twice about it. Those are important, and that's not going to happen in your kitchen.
Yeah, kind of unlike your old drugs that are kind of like a pill that were, kind of stamped out in a mass supply. A gene therapy for one person takes weeks to make. But if you were to treat 100 people, that it also takes the same amount of time. It's just basically the size of bioreactors. So the cost of the technology is there because there really is not enough manufacturing to compete with one another.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just take us on a short break, and when we come back, we want to listen to the personal life experiences of this parish. Look, my audience want to know how you traveled to Colombia and what happened in that trip, and how your life has been after that trip. We're gonna go on a short break, and we'll come back. We'll hear that story.
You are welcome, oh dear great minds. You are welcome to the intellectuals. You are welcome to learn and unlearn. Think what thinkers with Charles Awuzie.
So with Charles Awuzie. We do have two amazing guests who has been with us tonight, Liz Parish and Mian Ludo. And we just want to hear Liz's very unique story as patient zero for gene therapy. And Liz, we want to hear what the experience was, how you traveled, why you had to travel. Was it because of, regulatory issues, all of those information we do want to hear from you now.
Sure. So, I mean, I think that my journey is kind of it's emotional and it's hard for me to talk about. So I'll just skim over the top of it. But my story starts with a sick child and me looking for curative medicine. Then I went to one of Aubrey de Grey's conferences because the professor of genetics from Harvard was speaking there, and people were speaking about genetic curative technology. And I learned about all this technology that could help save kids. And what I learned is that it actually been around for a long time. This wasn't new technology. It had a lot of mouse testing. And mice are not humans, but it got me pretty excited about where this must be and how close this must be to people accessing it. And then I came across the hard truth that all of these headlines and these things that we read about, like curing cancer over and over again and several diseases, rarely actually translate to humans. There are a lot of problems, and the number one problem is patient zero. Who's going to be the first person to test innovative medicine? So living with a chronic condition with my son every day, I decided to build a company in which we would be the first. And I went out of the country and met with a medical doctor to do this treatment because it was actually a very gray area as to whether it was legal if I did this therapy or not in the United States. So this was months in the making. I had to find an investor to invest in the project, understanding that they would be investing in the outcome of the first ever use of 2 gene therapies to treat aging, whether that be a curative effect on aging or death. And then I needed to get my things in order. I did not tell my family. I knew that this would be too emotional. And, I kissed my kids and took a plane and went out of the country to take the therapy. So it was, they're just totally in my heart the entire time. And I took a series of injections. I probably took 150 injections because we wanted to test for 2 different things. Number one, whether the gene therapies worked, but number 2, whether they would cause cancer. And so I was injected everywhere that was high cancer risk, including my breasts, anywhere that was exposed to a high amount of sun, all over my face, all over my body. And when we were done, I I'm not sure that we even understood the impact on history that this would create.
Wow. Look, that's quite touching. And to think that you started this journey because of a sick child, and I think it just cuts across the experiences of most transhumanists. Most transhumanists that I've met um, embraced, the ideology of transhumanism in search of a solution to their medical problems, other personal problems or family medical issues. So I can relate to what you shared. Now my question to you, Liz, is on the age reversal therapy you took. A lot of people have asked me, does it mean that Liz won't age? And I mean, I'm gonna just ask it straight up. How old is Liz? And is Liz preparing, or will Liz age at any point in her life?
Unfortunately, I'm still aging in many of the hallmarks of aging, but in some of the hallmarks of aging, I have reversed the aging. And I think that was what was really confusing about BioViva coming forward to treat biological aging, and then our first test results coming out that for instance, my telomeres were longer. So telomeres are a clock of aging. They're a biological marker of how old you are. They're a little bit confusing because later in life they can stay critically short for a while before you die, but that shortness is associated with the end stage disease. So when we saw the telomeres getting longer after the first therapy, and then, since then I've taken 4 different gene therapies and telomerase reverse transcriptase, which is the gene to lengthen telomeres again. So we've seen lengthening. So here's the deal. As we start to treat aging, we'll start to throw out these old diseases like dementia, heart disease, and cancer, and we'll start to talk about, you have telomere attrition disease, you have mitochondrial dysfunction disease, you have senescent cell depletion. We'll start to change the language, and there'll be a therapy for those conditions. So I am chronologically 52, but my biological telomere length right now sits at about 28. And what's important about that, just telomere length itself, is there are 25 species, including humans, that our lifespan is limited to telomere attrition. It's called a Hayflick limit. It's not true in all species yet. It has yet to be sussed out. But in humans and 24 other species it is. So those cellular divisions are really important. So your cells divide to replace damaged tissues. And for instance, there's something called immune senescence. So this might put it into context to help you better understand it. Your immune system, when you get sick, needs to divide T cells in order to attack viruses. And it was found, of course, in people with immune senescence, meaning short telomeres in their immune system, they were highly likely to die of COVID-19. And so if you do not have cellular divisions, not dependent really on your age, although it's mostly aged people, even young people can have telomere deficiencies. And these are people who usually get end-stage diseases much earlier. The most severe form of that would be progeria. Those are kids who die generally in their teens or early 20s. I hate to say that because sometimes they're watching, but they die because lamina A gene throws off a lot of progerin, which then shortens the telomeres quickly. But this therapy hopefully could help them immensely. But so anyway, that's one measurement of aging. Then there's epigenetic aging, in which I think I'm in my mid to late 30s. And then again, the biological markers just continue to grow, which we need because it helps us measure whether a therapy works or not. Now, none of these are actually officially diagnostics. They have not been approved by the FDA, just like the therapies around them, but eventually they will be. And they're getting better all the time. So how old I am in my biological markers is very complicated. And some of them I'm really young, and some of them that we haven't tested or don't have therapies yet for, I may be super old. I'm
Look, look,
aging at a
look.
different rate.
At 52, and you look this amazing.
Oh,
It
thank
just
you.
shows how much. Yeah, it just shows how much science has helped. You know, and you also have got good genes, I must say. you know,
Well, actually,
and
my original telomere markers, just so you know, at the age of
mhm,
44 were in my 60s. I think my telomere length was the biological age of a 65-year-old, which actually marks well
wow.
with my family who are not long lived. They're lucky to live to their late 70s or maybe early 80s. And so, that's why looking at these markers are important. So having reversed that is we're on the right track.
Look, I owe you this. you know, I owe you some applause. I am super inspired. You've been able to take advantage of science to reverse generational aging disorder, and you are 52 and your biological age says 28, and you look 20s, like literally 20s. I thought you were going to say like there is, I didn't know you were 52 yet, you know. And that just shows how much we can achieve with science, how much we can hack our bodies. And you mentioned the telomeres, and um, currently the only telomere telomere centric therapy available are just the supplements, the telomerase supplements. And I've had Mio criticize nutritional biohackers. Like it tells as it is. They are scamming people, I mean, the nutritional biohackers. And they promise that what's it called? The supplements can reverse aging and do all of that stuff. So I'm coming back to you, Mel. Do you still stand by your initial stand on nutritional biohacking?
Yes. So for me, biohacking is four things. It's microbiology, molecular biology. It's building your own lab equipment, and it's putting technology inside your body. And I don't think that supplements are necessarily technology. I don't think dieting is biohacking, but everyone is entitled to their own belief of what that is. I have problems with people like Dave Asprey, who are basically who try and monopolize the name biohacking and take it as something that they have just to sell. I think that there's something fundamentally wrong with that. I don't think you can really gatekeep culture like that. Even though I tried to do just that exact same thing just then. So I think that a lot of supplements are absolute garbage, unless there's certain conditions. Sometimes you might have a condition where you actually need something that you're missing in your diet. But in Australia, where I'm from, if you eat a balanced diet, you're probably going to get everything that you need. And if you really want, maybe you can take a multivitamin once a month, and that might help you too. But there are a range of things that are nutraceutical, as Liz said before, that are actually somewhere between supplements and medicines. A good example of this is astaxanthin. It's an oil that comes from like shrimp and lobsters. It's what turns them red. It's what gives salmon its color. This has been shown to have some effect on the cardiovascular system. Maybe it improves some skin tightness and a few other things. And with any of these things, I always go and look at the literature before I do it. And I understand not everyone is able to read scientific journals and quickly work out whether it's bullshit or not. But I think that when we're talking about things like aging, you can exercise all you want, but you're going to die at 80. Like as Liz said, there are inbuilt genetic limits. No amount of positive thinking or exercise is going to get you past that. Positive thinking and exercise will get you to 80 though, and that's very important. There's nothing better for you than 15 minutes of cardiovascular exercise 3 times a week. Like that's awesome. You're gonna feel great, and you're gonna live longer probably. But if we want to crack this ceiling, you have to go in and fix the blueprints, right? Your DNA isn't your fate. It's the blueprints. Genetic therapies allow us to rewrite those blueprints to give it a different plan. And the reason those blueprints stopped cells dividing in the first place was to stop conditions like cancer and these other things, right? It's in there for a reason. And if we go in with our eyes open and use proper therapies, we're going to do very well. Now, on that note, I just want to add one more thing. If the supplements make you feel good and you're enjoying yourself, you know what? Take them. I don't think they're based in science, but you know what? Like my grandma used to wear a bracelet that had magnets on it. And I could never say to her, they don't work. Because when she put it on, her pain went away. Right?
Yeah.
And if it works for you, you know what? Good on you. If I could sell a pill, placebutol, and you just tell me what you got and this pill cures it, a group of people are going to be cured by that, no matter what the condition is. And
Awesome.
It's important for us to recognize that too. So, you know what, as much as I slam them, I don't think it's ethical to profit from it though. That is the bigger thing.
Good. I'm going to take that question to you, Liz. What are your thoughts on supplements, age reversal or anti-aging supplements, especially the telomerase and the NMN?
I am not a nutraceutical professional. I do believe that there are benefits of evidence-based technology. I think that there is also a lot of BS. And I think that you have to realize that when you take a certain dose of something that's found in nature, but at a magnitude higher, it probably is a drug. I mean, it's not something that your body would naturally see. So anyway, I think that people should biohack with them, and I think they should test their markers. And if their markers look better, then maybe there is a benefit. As Meow Meow was saying, there is the law of diminishing returns, and so that's when you'll need to bring in the bigger guns. But sure, especially if you're testing your biomarkers and they look better, I do believe that there are several evidence-based nutraceuticals out there that could benefit a lot of people. And actually, one of the biggest biohacking, especially in the United States these days, might just be eating healthy, because we don't eat very great food, and still a lot of the world outside of these countries have nutritional deficits that these sort of nutraceuticals could help. So, I mean, you want to live long enough to see the cure for aging, diet, exercise, all of that have to do with it. So do a really good job, because, we, at the end of the day, we want to see you cross the finish line with us, which means getting to the point where we can genetically regulate you into homeostasis. But anyway, I think that, unfortunately, as was discussed, there are probably some really bad players out there. And there are a couple of really bad players out there who sell nutraceuticals and actually attack the longevity industry. They attack gene therapy that is all super evidence-based science, trying to sell nutraceuticals. And that makes me really mad, because, you shouldn't discredit good science for something that is not really going to help people cross the finish line entirely. But will it help you today? It sure as hell might. So you might want to try it and test yourself and see if it's benefiting you. And if it is, then by all means, do it.
Awesome. So we have one party saying, try it out. And we have Beyond saying, you could, but he's got his reservations. And now that takes us to questions from our audience. By the way, we've got a lot of compliments for you and your looks, Liz. Someone says, Oge says, you look so young.
I think you look younger than when we met, Liz, which was fun.
Yeah.
I think we actually did that a couple of times. We are always cooking up plans, aren't we?
Yeah.
There's nothing like meeting in person.
I think Liz. Yeah, I think Liz is aging so nice. Backwards.
That is so nice of you. I wish my kids would watch some of this, and I'd be like, "What a compliment I got."
Just frame them and put them up on the wall, right?
Yeah.
Around
My daughter's like, "Are you serious? You're going to wear that?" And I'm like,
Mhm.
"Look, I got a compliment."
Also, I want to just, I'm
Awesome.
just going to add one, if I can add one final thing onto the supplement debate.
Oh,
Okay.
please.
The thing that pisses me off most about the supplements is that, one, we know what causes aging, right? Like not everything, but the big things that cause the most aging, we know, because it turns out the bigger the effect, the easier it is to find things. So we found telomeres ages ago, like 20, 30 years ago. We have treatments that fix the main cause of aging, this one big thing. Like if you were to put all the things that cause aging, telomeres stick out as this one massive thing that definitely has an effect. And we have something that definitely treats it. And people are putting money into all these things that like could maybe do something, or maybe there's some limited support. Dude, we have found a study in Spain where they gave gene therapy to rats and they lived 20% longer, more than 20% longer.
In our study, they lived 41% longer in mice, giving them just telomerase reverse transcriptase repeatedly. And, I mean, you are touching on a really good point, Meow. The thing is that Bill Andrews is one of our scientific advisors, and he worked on a lot of those products that are out there that you can ingest that are supposed to lengthen your telomeres. And I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I don't think that he's a fan of them. I think that he said that they may decrease the shortening of the telomeres, but they probably are not doing a lot of lengthening of the telomeres in a significant way. So again, as an advisor, and he's actually said it publicly several times. Yeah.
And you've actually said there is a place for medications that might reduce the shortening, and that's after we've solved the big problem of how do we stop the telomere shortening when the genes have been switched off, which is that we need to switch them back on first. And then we can worry about, NMN, reducing oxidation of NAD and all that stuff. That's all great, but it's not the most immediate concern. It's like your house being on fire and you checking the mailbox. It's like, yeah, that needs to be done, but
I totally hear you. And what you're saying is that people need to get out there and they need to demand access to the most innovative and strongest use of technology, and then supplement their body with some of these things to maybe like even increase the benefits, or, like maximize, like, of course you would do gene therapies. You want to eat well and exercise and get your maximum. And like, you're saying, let's not do it the wrong way around since we already have the technology.
And if you have the time and you're sitting there doing research on NMN, you probably also have other skills that you can help bring about a transhumanist future. Like if you're a promotional person, you can make ads about how exciting this is. If you're an HR person, you can get a group of people that meet to talk about these technologies. If you are a banker, you can bring money to these projects. And the thing is, we can collectively force the rest of the world to do this. And if enough of us get together, we can just do it on our own.
Yeah, gosh, I think that's the number one thing. Everyone listening, you're not unqualified. Like when people make articles and they say, oh, this person isn't qualified to do this. Oh, for me, this woman's just a mother. Are you kidding me? That's probably like the biggest qualification on the planet. Like I can help run 2 companies and do a myriad of other things and speak globally on regulations because I am a mother. I mean, I have a stake in the future for these children and everyone else. And you know what? I know the value of life. And you don't have to be a microbiologist or, a gene specialist or anything else. Your superpower, you don't even know what it is. You just go look at the things that you do on a daily basis, and you will find yourself, and you can help us. Like everyone get involved.
100%.
Oh, wow, that's really a great call, for participation. Everyone get involved. Doesn't matter whether you're a scientist or not, technologist or not, you have something to contribute to advance, the evolution of humanity. We do have some comments and questions from the community and audience. But before that, I'm just going to add the Transhuman Coin community manager to the chat. And that's Andrew Cookey from Australia.
Greetings, everyone.
Andrew, do you have some? Hi, Andrew. Do you have questions from the Transhuman Coin community? Or your personal questions to Liz and to Mia?
Oh, we can't hear him.
Mike is on mute.
Andrew?
Apparently I muted myself again. That's interesting.
Okay.
Sorry. No, I just checked the main chat then, and there's no questions there specifically. And I personally have just been paying attention and listening along and learning as much as I can. This is definitely not one of my areas of expertise, so I'm just a happy little learner in this area.
My challenge then to anyone that doesn't have a question is tomorrow when someone asks you, how are you, what are you doing, and they open up a conversation with you, I want you to say to them, I heard a conversation about something that blew my mind, and ask them the question like, if you could live forever, is that something you'd want to do? And open up and have those conversations, because that is how everything will change.
Or better yet,
Good.
say, when do you want to die?
Whoa.
When do you want to have dementia? When would you like your dementia to start setting in? Ooh,
that's a
really
deeper
good.
one.
I had a
Yeah.
really, really lovely woman sit down with me in Spain, and she said that she was happy to die of aging because she thought that that was a natural way to die, and she thought that anything else might be sinful. And then I asked her if she'd ever been in the hospital. Yes. Have you ever had a surgery? Yes. Do you use technology to improve your life? Yes. Have you taken antibiotics? Yes. Well, then, perhaps it's, God's will that you partake in science, and that science helps you live longer and healthier. And boy, she was just converted immediately. She was like, wow, I didn't realize that I'm already using science. It's the reason I'm alive. And that this isn't like some big step outside of her comfort zones. Because we have to remember that everybody has their comfort zones and their belief systems.
Yeah.
And that technology actually fits into your belief system. It's not, going grading against it. The reason that humans live as long as they do and as well as they do, and the reason that we're able to populate as we do, is because of science. And so, we're just saying that if we have decided to live in a world in which we lift each other up, and we have more births, and we have more children live longer, then shouldn't we ethically cure dementia, heart disease, and cancer? Because those don't bring meaning to life. They bring suffering and terror.
And God gave us the ability to do this if he exists, right? He literally left the tools required to do it. And I think, I'm not a super religious person or anything like that, but I think there is nothing, no better way of worship than examining the creations at the molecular level, because there's when I first started doing it, it was so addictive because I couldn't believe how much beauty there was there, and it's like walking past the Mona Lisa and not taking a minute to look at it.
Yeah, I always will say I believe in all goddesses when people ask me, but I did ask my chemistry teacher when I was in college. I said, do you believe in God? Do you believe there's a religion? And he said, absolutely. Why would people work so hard on science their entire life to see something that to work on something they may never see in their lifetime? There's like this progression, there is this desire, there is this innate thing in humans that helps us build on technology. The first people that were working on gene therapy, for instance, many of them have passed. But in the future, many people will live maybe even indefinitely long because of their desire to sit at the bench and try to figure out technology. So I have spoken with Christians, Muslims, many transhumanist groups that are based in a multitude of religions, and even with the Dalai Lama, who was interested in this technology years ago. And all of these groups embrace technology and believe that technology is given through their belief system. And I think that that's very beautiful.
Look, I'm gonna say this. I usually would try to, stay away a bit from religion because here in Africa, religion is a big problem, because Africa is highly religious, extremely religious, right? And that has, in so many ways, impeded the advancement of science and technology in Africa. And what we see is a population, very massive population of people who would rather die. I mean, there is a religious sect in Africa that forbids blood transfusion, right? There is another movement, the Pentecostal movement, who consider CS, like women giving birth through CS, as a curse, right? So what happens is, I actually have a very personal story, of that situation. We are a very close friend of mine, a lady. She was pregnant and, got into hospital, was due for delivery, and the doctors said, no, you can't push. She has some heart disorders, and they suggested, advised that she go through CS. She delivered through CS, and the pastor, her prophet, told her that it is against the will of God for her to deliver through CS. There is what the Bible mentions. I think that was in the Old Testament, where it speaks of the Hebrew women giving birth with ease, right?
Wow.
And yeah, so that is the prayer of most religious pregnant women, to give birth like Hebrew women.
Wow.
And this woman literally
that's
repeats.
amazing. Actually, many women died, and I think that if there's a God, that would be, you wouldn't let someone die, right? I mean,
Yeah, he wouldn't.
that's probably a shocking translation of
Yeah,
text that is, well, I mean, wouldn't
yeah,
that be against every principle of goodness,
yeah,
right?
And
yeah.
Ouch.
if it did let that happen, why worship? And I think that's the other thing too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
And
sad.
she
Well,
passed. She died. She died because
that's shocking, and that's terrible. And the baby, I'm sure, died too. And you know what?
yeah, the baby
Maybe
died.
that's a reason to talk about it. Maybe that's a reason to
Yeah,
clarify what is a human's translation of something, but what is pure good, because that's
yeah,
sounds like a complete opposite U-turn in what would be good.
yeah. And that reminds me of the words of Aubrey. Aubrey was asked by a religious leader if transhumanists aren't playing God by trying to radically extend human lifespan. And Aubrey said something that caught my attention. I quote him. He said, if trying to solve death, and extending human life means playing God, then that's just another way of us demonstrating what it looks like, what it should be to be the image of God. Like, it's just another way of him trying to, demonstrate the image of God. I mean, if the Bible, the Christian Bible, or whatever holy book anyone reads, says that man was created in God's own image, why do religion then fight back when man tries to create? Because this God should be a creator. I mean, you know what I mean? And if man is trying to create, I think God should be happy. He should be excited. And if if man was made to die, man wouldn't have the immune system, the defense system, which kicks out diseases. And the make of man signals the original intention of longevity and even immortality. And the fact that death and diseases, should be controlled, through science and technology. And that is just to add to what Liz brought up on, how religion can affect or impede science. Liz, want
I
to say
was
something?
just looking. I have slides that people or images or quotes that people send me from all over the world, from religions, all the religions that we know, that actually qualifies this type of science as being part of their religion. And so there are many quotes in these texts that actually support the increased lifespan and health span of humans. And anything less is, it would not be very good of you to allow humans to suffer. And I think that we can be very
Yeah.
clear about that. And so, translation and control over people's bodies is not the right way to do, obviously, any of these sort of texts. So, actually, even though this is an area that I don't delve into because I was not raised religious, I think it might be a good conversation to have, because I think it might be an important conversation to have. You certainly need to know the difference between your beliefs and someone trying to control you through your beliefs.
Now, on that note, there's an interesting
Yeah.
ethical question that is begged by this kind of way of thinking, which is that if tomorrow we wake up, we already have it, but anti-aging technology becomes available, and you choose not to take it, in essence, you're committing suicide, because it would be the equivalent of not moving out of the flow of the. If it's like standing on a train track and letting the train hit you, right? You can just step off it. So at some point, there's going to be a hard conversation a lot of religious people are going to have, which is this is going to happen in the next 10 years, right? We are going to have these medicines that are able to that not just extend your life by a year or 2 years, a decade, by 10, 20 years per decade. And when this happens, you're going to be outrunning the Reaper. And if you don't, he's going to catch you. And that's the equivalent.
You're costing society money too, and governments don't like that. Today, if you don't treat your children with modern medicine whom are sick, you can go to jail. Especially if they die, you are in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. And what Liz and Mia are saying is that in the coming years, and this is going to happen soon, it would become illegal. It could become illegal if you don't embrace, anti-aging therapies. And a time is going to come when, if you reject longevity therapies, it would look like suicide, because you'll be choosing to die. And the question is asked, at the earlier stage of this conversation is, do you really want to die?
Yeah, and there's the other side. There's so people say, well, people shouldn't live longer. There's overpopulation. But if there's a cure for dementia and you block that cure for dementia, on the other hand, that's murder.
Yeah.
That's some logic. They
don't have to live forever. I'm just happy living forever. So if they're like, oh, there's too many people, whatever, move away. We'll hang out, have our party for a few hundred years.
We'll meet. What is it? The restaurant.
Yeah. Go ahead.
The restaurant at the end of the universe.
Douglas Adams. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to take questions from the community. We do have one from Lillian. Lillian says, please, are there any side effects, to the gene therapies? And I think that would first go to you, Lee, because I have implants, So do you experience any side effects?
Well, a side effect of a drug can be a benefit or something negative. And so there are side effects to, for instance, lengthening your telomeres. With clotho, there's side effects of geroprotection. But I think that what this person is asking is, are there negative side effects? So with gene therapy, we're only upregulating the protein in which will benefit the cell. So we don't, it's not like small molecule drugs anymore where, you know, you take your statins to lower your LDL cholesterol, but you put yourself at great risk for both dementia and type 2 diabetes. This is literally just upregulating the protein that your cells need to be healthier. So we don't, we only work with technology in my company. We work with 5 different genes now that are associated with healthier outcomes in cells and in animal studies. And they don't have any known negative effects to the gene therapy. So after I did the gene therapy, there was some uncomfortable effects to immune suppressants that I took for several weeks. But when I was done with those, you know, after that, it's just, you know, less aches and pains, better overall health and digestion. And in the case of follistatin, one of the genes I took, muscle mass increase. So this is just a really new class of exciting drugs. Certainly, there are some genes out there you wouldn't want to upregulate. You wouldn't want to just go and do any gene therapy. But if you work with evidence-based meta-analysis, there are some good gene candidates out there. And for instance, we just put in for a pre-IND meeting with the US FDA just a few days ago. Our documents went in, and we're looking forward to hearing back from them. And these are using these genes, in this case, for dementia. And so this was based on a case study that was done with 5 patients already. And there were no severe adverse events at all in any of these patients. And we, as a company, we can't do medical tourism. We can't give gene therapies, but we can oversee the data. And we've got another paper coming out of, I think, 15 people who have had their telomeres lengthened. And so you'll see that come out pretty soon. And so we just basically keep rolling data, and then we push that towards the regulatory system to approve us to use these drugs in a proper clinical trial.
Oh, that's good. And to Mia, have you experienced any side effects with? Yeah, go ahead.
So, so when I've had technology put in, it's generally these are DIY, right? But the microchips I have are very similar to the ones that a cat or a dog have. So they've been tested so many times in mammals, but some of these can actually cause cancer in a very small amount. But we don't really care in dogs and cats because they don't live very long, so even if they get cancer, it's not the end of the world. But that was caused because there was a certain coating on them. So all the ones that go into humans have had that coating removed, and it means that they're more likely to move around your body, but they won't bring proteins to them, which eventually can cause cancer. It doesn't always. Now, there's if it smashes inside your body, it could release glass. But I've never heard of anyone have this happen, but it is something to think about. One question I get asked a lot is, is it detectable through the airport when you go through the scanners or with an MRI? And the answer is no. No one knows you have them, and you can get an MRI with them. No worries at all. They don't interact. So that's fine. But there are some things you might want to know. You know, it's an invasive procedure, and that is actually where the problems come in. So doctors don't put these in Australia. Generally, they're done by professional body modification piercer people. So someone that might put an earring in is the same person that might put this into your hand. Now, when you take a foreign object and you put it inside your body and you close it up, it provides a really good scaffold for bacteria to grow on it. So if you have any contamination, you can die. And people have died in Australia from this. So, and not electronic ones just decorative out of silicon, but it happens. So and any backyard surgery or anything like this is gonna have that there. So with all these things, you need to do as much research as possible about what the risks are, This conversation might be a starting point if you're interested in that technology, but you have to go until you're confident that you understand the risks.
That's great. That's great. And I hope that answers Lillian's question. We're going to move to the next question, and that is by Mr. Osai. The question goes to Liz. He says, I am fascinated by your boldness to embark on this journey. What safety measures did you put in place, or guarantees guarantees were given to you to protect your safety?
That's a good question. So one of the things that we did is we really studied the gene therapies for almost 2 years before we did them, and we looked at all of the data that we could. When I did the gene therapies, I did them with a medical doctor in a medical clinic with all of the equipment that would be necessary in case I had anaphylactic shock or anything like that, and only blocks away from a hospital. So, as much as, I guess I'm a biohacker and I promote people doing with their bodies what they like to do, I definitely suggest that you should always work with a healthcare professional and in a healthcare setting. Other than that, I certainly made sure my bills were paid before I went, and made sure that everything was in order in my life, because at any moment when you're taking a risk, people should know your passwords, and you should not be burdening people with your problems. But yeah, so we did it as safely as possible. This certainly wasn't me giving myself a gene therapy in a basement or anything like that. We took it very seriously.
Great. And we have another question here from Florence. She's asking if, she said, can a disease like dementia be reversed?
We sure hope so. So we have a study that we did with 5 people, and this is what we're asking for FDA approval to move this study forward into a U.S. Clinical trial. 4 out of the 5 patients actually saw increased cognitive ability and lengthened telomeres. We used 2 different genes in the therapy in a very low dose, and we're hoping with a higher dose it would have benefit. And by adding a 3rd gene, we could get a super effect. It is not a curative therapy as this point. We don't have enough data to prove that. And again, 1 patient had no benefit whatsoever. They had an immune response to the gene therapy, which luckily in this type of gene therapy is just kind of a mild fever and malaise for a couple of days. So, we're hoping, of course, we're marching towards a cure for dementia. We're also watching other gene therapy studies. UCSD is doing a study with BDNF in the patients of dementia with suspected Alzheimer's. And then there's a couple other studies that are going on, one in Texas, and I can't remember where the last one is. But what we're doing is we're watching all of those because my company, BioViva, has become very interested in gene therapy delivery. And we're working with a new vector called CMV, which we can pack a lot more genetic material into each vector, meaning that you can get a bigger payload to your cells. Because as I said, 1 gene does not appear to cure all of aging. So we're going to need a multitude of them. And instead of paying for 4 different therapies, hopefully with CMV, you'll just pay for 1. And that will reduce the costs and make things awesome for bringing in more genes. So the hope, and I do believe we will be able to cure dementia. How soon that will happen has everything to do with the regulators. They need to let these technologies in so that they can be evidence-based and tested in humans.
Great. We have this beautiful compliment from Mary. She says, this section is quite enlightening. I hope to join more of your sessions in the future and also make great research on this too. Thank you, Charles, Liz, and Mia. And yeah, and we have King saying, how old are you, ma'am? Because you looking younger than your actual age. She said it. You want to say that again?
Is that for me again? I am 52.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but chronologically, she's 52, and after her therapy, her clock reversed to about 28, and
In
she
the
looks quite.
20s, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you
No
so much
mess.
for the
Yeah.
compliment. I'm just like so shocked of all the compliments that I'm just like sitting here days. I'm looking at who's that for?
That's for you. Yeah. And Doku says if you go to the hospital, have you've taken surgery and antibiotics, then it's part of God's will for you to use science to live longer and healthier. And I have a question for you, Liz and Mia. Dr. Jose Cordero, in the um, death of death, he postulates that by 2045, we would have achieved radical life extension. Do you believe that this could happen by 2045?
Yeah.
Man, I reckon that is conservative. I think that things are happening quicker than any of us expect. And if you want to have a look at that, I spoke to someone the other day and I said to him, "Oh, I saw this great new AI tool." And it just came out. And I told him and he said, "Dude, that came out 3 days ago." Right? That's how fast technology is moving at the moment, that things that are hours old are considered deprecated. Now, when we're in an era where technology is accelerating, it is hard for us to understand what that means because we always think in these arithmetic progressions. We think linearly, like yesterday, the difference between yesterday was the same as the difference tomorrow. But what it actually is, the difference next week is the difference between all human history before added on. And that's the era that we're in. And this is why I reckon 2029 to 2032, this is an area where we're going to have a singularity. And when we talk about singularities as transhumanists, there's lots of words thrown around. Is this an AI? Is this a godlike AI? But it's basically there's events that you can't see past them. Because once things happen, the world is so radically different that you can't imagine how life could have been without it. And we've experienced some of them. We have iPhones, we're a singularity. The internet is a singularity. But the one that's coming up is like a fucking tsunami. And no one's prepared. And I think that this is when we're going to see these technologies take off. We're going to see AI and robotics just completely change the entire world in ways that I dream of every single day.
And I think that that's such a good point. So, these new AI chats are just blowing people's minds. Well, this is an area in which people have been able to freely develop and to use the technology. And if we were using medicine in this way, at this exponential rate, we already wouldn't identify with 10 years ago as far as the health landscape. So we really need to get these technologies into humans who need them now and then start to work them back as immunizations against aging so that people don't have to suffer the consequences. So as was already said, we already have a bunch of technology that could radically address the healthcare system. We have not been able to legally use it. There is no route for this new medicine yet, but it is building, and we are part of building it. So if we unharnessed the ability of terminal patients to actually access new and innovative medicine, our head would be just as whipped by medicine today in the breakthroughs of the last 3 years than as it is to these new AI chat systems that are just growing and getting more powerful. It's really actually quite unfortunate. So 2045 is more like when average people will start to see it. Do you want to wait till 2045? If you're out there, if you don't, demand access from your governments. demand, sign our petition. We've got bestchoicemedicine.com. Go and sign the petition. It's a global initiative to help terminally ill patients get access so that you can get access sooner.
And engage with your politicians as well. Like
Yes.
Peter Zing, who's good friends with Charles and myself, we've run for parliament many times. And it doesn't matter if you win, it's about bringing conversations and opening them up where traditionally they don't happen. Everyone wants to talk in the politics about healthcare, school systems, public transport. But if you go up there as a candidate and you say, I want to talk about life extension, and you say, you guys are regulating this, and you are putting this regulation to save everyone's life, how much life is lost by not embracing these technologies? Maybe the regulators are actually, this said before, billions of people are dying every year of aging, and the reason that the drugs aren't being tested is because they're worried they might hurt people. Well, you were the one that said this when we first met, and there's a calculus you have to do where you realize at some point the regulation actually kills more people than it saves.
74% of the world now dies of non-communicable diseases. Vastly, the top 4 of the 74% of diseases that kill everyone around the world, this is globally, are all aging diseases, and like 6 and 7 and 8 are as well. So this is something to take very seriously and to start to balance risk and benefit in a way that makes sense with today's technology, which is very different from 40 years ago.
Yeah, and Solomon says it is for the rich. It is for the rich, and this is the major concern. Each time we have this conversation in Africa, and we hear people say things like, "This is for the rich." We can't have access to it, and I think that's what we've been trying to, discuss in this conversation, to say, with time, and by public participation, especially in countries like Nigeria, South Africa, and the rest of Africa, if we engage our governments, we could get governments to subsidize such therapies, and it would start by declaring aging as a disease, and I would come back to Yumia. Are there movements,
Sorry. It is for the rich, but you know what? There is a great level up, and I know that I know that I come from a wealthy country and stuff like that. But the internet changed everything. If there are websites where you can download textbooks for free, and you can read them. And I know that that's hard and it takes time, and that not everyone has the ability to be able to take 3 hours out of their day to be able to do it. But the thing is, it is for the rich, but it's not completely taken away from you. You can get together with people and you can learn what you need to do from first principles and build this stuff from scratch yourself, because that's how it started in the developed countries as well. Like America, if you can build equipment that was being built 50 years ago, and some of that equipment will be able to make the basic types of medicines that we've been talking now. And the more knowledge you have, the cheaper you can do it. Now, the internet also, so the internet allows you to learn, but it also allows you to organize. So you can, and this happens all the time, you can get into groups, Facebook groups, Yahoo groups, Google groups, all these things, right? Forums. And you can say, listen, I come from a country with these resources. I don't have this, I don't have that. How would I go about building this? And you can ask for help. And if you're humble, you can build it. You can say, I need help. What do I need to read? How would I build this for under $100? Because the thing is, some of the smartest people who work at some of the biggest institutions find the most exciting challenges helping people in countries that are interested in what they do. Because most people don't care at all.
And remember, the technology is still new. It's still vastly unknown. So yes, people with a lot of money can access it, but they're taking a much bigger risk than you will eventually when the drugs are very well assessed. So demanding access to it and telling your regulators, I mean, that's what makes the difference. AIDS, this AIDS epidemic in the United States is what pushed drug development fast forwarded it by multitude of years, and these patients had drugs to use within a year and a half because they demanded access. So these are new, inexpensive technologies. It's kind of like having the first supercomputer or the first, mobile phone. They were vastly new, unknown technology. They were kind of, in their infancy, and they were very expensive. But expediting them to other people is the job of the people demanding access. There's no, I mean, if they weren't going to be affordable, I wouldn't be here. Our company is all about affordable gene therapy for the masses. I wouldn't even bother speaking here, but I can't do it alone. Me as one person, I will just be, it's called character assassination. You see it over and over again in our industry. I need you to stand up with me. I need you to demand access with me and affordability with me. And we can do it, but it has to be together.
You have to be a loudspeaker, like a lighthouse, spreading the information and shining that light onto everyone around you and getting them to do the same thing and the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is to you, Miel and Liz. Okay, I'm going to ask you both some question. Are you open to come to Africa to engage governments in Africa on the needs to, get involved?
Absolutely. Yeah, I have my Best Choice Medicine platform is all about that, helping countries bring in ethical and moral use of technologies in a way that is as safe as possible. And no country in the world can look down upon them for these type of laws and committees. And so, I absolutely would love to address governments about these technologies. I know the power of the technology. I know the benefits, potential benefits to society, and I have a background in the legal structure for these technologies. So I'd be happy to, more than happy to.
I think anything we can do to bring to collectivize and get us all working together is a good idea. And I think the human race came out of Africa. That's the cradle of civilization. Maybe it's also the place that transhumanism will truly be born too.
It's a great place of the world. These countries in Africa, I mean, again, from, mobile phone dispersion and development and internet access and everything else, you have the ability to leapfrog technology. Your hospitals shouldn't be sitting there saying, oh, we have to afford, all of this equipment that we don't have yet. Literally, you can leapfrog that technology into innovative development that will create the funds around it to afford everything that is needed to. I mean, it's just, you don't need all of this old equipment. You're literally fast forwarding into the future of health.
Awesome. And someone is watching tonight who has the funds, not just, to get the therapies, but to invest in these therapies and this emerging field. And their question would be, how do I invest in your company, Liz? And how do I invest in your therapy, Miel? First to Liz, how can an investor, get across to your, are you open to investments?
Yeah, so I have two privately held companies, and essentially you just need to go to their websites and reach out and ask to fill out an investor form. And if you're a good fit for us and we're a good fit for you, then we can move forward to have you invest in these technologies.
For me, I have one private company at the moment. And I similar kind of thing. You just reach out to me and we would have a conversation, because I think the thing is, when someone invests in your company, you give away something of the company back to them. And sometimes that is a good match. And sometimes it might be, maybe I would advise them on investing in their own company or a new venture. And I think, but good on you if you decide, hey, you know what, I want to stick my money in something that matters. And I think that that's the most important thing of all.
Yeah, and that's how I got the second company going. Is people. This often happens. People reach out. They have a family member, or they have a special interest in an area of gene therapy. They have a family member with a specific disease. Let me clarify. And instead of asking a company who's already working, let's say, on aging specific diseases, instead of asking us to start working on a monogenic disease, let me help you start your own company. And either I'll come with you or I don't need to, because what I want to do is energize people to go out and solve problems and, dilute what's out there and make a world of, questionable desires behind making medicine, turn them into altruistic desires and flat out change the platform into good players rather than people who just want money. Honestly, as was mentioned before, health shouldn't cost you anything. I'm hoping in the future you pay my company for enhancement. Let's say you want to be more than healthy, you want to have super muscles or
Yeah.
purple eyes or the ability to absorb oxygen underwater. Hopefully we'll work on things like that to make money and not health, because health should
Yeah.
be.
Yeah. But that sounds, quite human. And just to mention that we don't have a lot of people coming with like 10K USD, 20K. I want to ask a straight up question. What is the minimum investable capital that your companies are open to?
Okay, so they're different for each company. BioViva actually has a very, very high threshold for a minimum investment, and we do that for on purpose. The company is here to bring the wealth of technology to the masses, to people who cannot afford it. And we believe that that should be done by people who can afford to make a better world for others. So our minimum
Yeah.
investment is actually quite high. It's probably, I think it's around $250,000. And and of course we ask for more than that from investors, because these are mission based investors. They're private investors who actually want to see a better world for everyone. And so that's our qualifications are very high from that. We don't believe that people who cannot afford large investments should be putting their money into high risk endeavors. We believe that you should be using that money to eat and feed your children.
Great. Great. And Mio?
For my companies, so my last company, we had a rule that we wouldn't accept investments under $25,000, but we ended up, most of our investments, three investments were $250,000. So, but yeah, that was like, because that was what we needed. But the most important thing for us is, if you wanted to give us $500, but it turns out that you had a skill set that was complementary, or it was important to you, something like this, that's actually more important than the money. Because when you're running companies in exciting areas like life extension and stuff, it's not hard to find the money. It is hard to find the right money, because sometimes taking money can actually hold you back. You can get people on the board that maybe don't share your ideology about sharing it with people, for example, or democratizing it, and then you have a conflict of interests, and then all of a sudden the company can stop. And just to give you a quick example, the biggest solar farm in the world was meant to be happening in Australia, in the middle of a desert. And two billionaires couldn't work out whose dick was bigger, and because of that, the whole company's collapsed, right?
Wow.
And meanwhile, we just had the world's hottest day on record 2 days ago, right? And this is because the wrong people are in the boardroom together, right? And they both probably could have paid for it on their own. The question is why they start a company together if they're not a good match. And that's why I'm saying, you know what? But if you come to me and you said, hey, Meow, I want to do this thing, it's really cool, maybe I can find you someone else in my group who's also wanting to do something similar, who I think your personalities would be a good match, and then I can help you get started. And that's the most important.
Yeah.
We
And I'm
really
just
have
going to add this.
ego aside. Ego has to go away in order for us to achieve big things. That's for sure. Sorry about that.
Great. Awesome. Yeah. Miao is on the board, on the scientific advisory board of Transhumancoin, and we created Transhumancoin actually to decentralize investment in the longevity field. You know, we use the DAO structure. And the idea is that I mean, if individuals won't be able to put up quarter of $1 million, we could come together as a community and make those kind of investments. But my last question to you, Liz, is: are you signing up for cryonics?
I am not currently signed up for cryonics.
And is there a reason for that? Do you ever think you would? Do you believe in cryonics?
Yeah, I think that Greg Fay and some people are working on some good areas of cryonics. I mean, great uses of cryonics are space travel, organ transplant necessities. Hopefully, eventually, we'll be able to regenerate your own organs inside your body with gene and cell therapies. But they're great for that. I think that it's a nice plan B, but just as far as what I've seen so far, I haven't been super motivated by what I see in the studies that it would be useful, I guess. And right now, I just wouldn't want my family to spend money towards that. I guess right now I'm planning on dying once. But if I see more movement in the field, then I might really get behind it. And I'm not against it. You're just putting me really on the spot, so I'm just being very honest and candid about my feelings around it. So as it shows more evidence of us being able to pull through and organs not fracturing and things like that, then I think I would be more excited about it. A good friend of mine was recently cryonically stored, and it gave me more desire and hope for the technology than ever before. So I believe that the cryonics company that I believe in has not yet been developed yet. And when it is, I will probably sign up.
Awesome.
So listeners, you need to start a good cryonics company.
Yeah, that might be when I have time in the next 10 years.
Awesome. And that brings us to the end of this session.
Wait a minute. I want to hear from Charles and Meow about this. What's your positioning in cryonics? Come on, don't let me.
Meow.
I never really thought about it too much until reasonably recently, when someone actually put me on the spot and asked me about it. We had a conversation, and I actually hadn't thought about it too much before, and hadn't done a lot of research as well. So I kind of thought, I grew up in an era where there was a lot of problems with cryonics. It was the beginning of cryonics. So there was power outages where people thawed out and all this stuff. So I thought it was a really sketchy industry. But I went and had a look, and a lot has changed. Since the 2010s onwards, things are really redundant systems, low cost. They've worked out ways to make sure that you'll never run out of money and all these things. But I'm kind of with Liz. I'm not going to stay alive, right? And if I get frozen, if it's a cool experiment, I would donate my body to give it a go and see what happens.
I'm an organ donor.
That's it. And some of the techniques, freezing brains is pretty cool now. So it's you can glassify the brain, which is quite interesting. But I'm kind of like, when humans are that involved in the process, maybe the risks are too great across long periods of time. But I've created such a big imprint of myself through social media and notes that I've written and all these things and photos, that I think my chance of being resurrected by an AI is probably greater than my chance of being resurrected from cryonics. And also, cryonics is expensive. It's expensive. I want to spend my money while I'm alive. I want to go to Thailand. I don't want to be spending my money so that someone can make some liquid nitrogen and pour it in me. I want to enjoy myself. Because what's the point of living forever if you're stuck in a room or something?
So it's a great choice for some people, especially if it gives them a feeling of hope. For me, it's still
Yeah.
buying into death, and I'm just not willing to do that yet. Charles,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Yeah, you'd like to know that. Look, my first interest in transhumanism was actually cryonics, and that's because my background is in religion. I was a pastor, right? And I found it interesting that the human consciousness can be preserved, by science. At first, it just didn't make sense to me, because there is that afterlife theology where you are taught that after death, there is judgment. Then the person is going to die, go to wherever they need to go. So I was trying to explore the possibility of preserving human consciousness, right? And yeah, that was how I got my first romance with transhumanism and with cryonics. And I became quite interested in the science of it. And I did some research and reached out to some people in the field. And yeah, there is this pseudo-scientific thing that goes on with it, right? And but with Dr. Jose's conference in Spain, in Madrid, was it last year? Yeah, last year, Transition 2022. It kind of, opened my mind to new possibilities in the field. And I think it's still quite developing, right? It's still quite developing, and it could take years. Now, my fear is this: if we're expecting um, s- um, us to achieve super longevity by 2045, it literally means that by 2045, cryonics wouldn't be necessary again, you know. And it's a short-term plan B, and yeah, so for now, I have put some brakes on it while focusing on living longer,
I'm super
And like you
happy it's
said,
being worked on. It's a super important area, regardless. And like you said, if we achieve super longevity, then that probably means that we also, hopefully, and achieve the ability to reanimate. And then I mean, absolutely give me some evidence, and I think that is a great idea. And also, again, space travel, slowing down metabolism so humans can get really far and getting those organs
yeah,
transplanted. I mean, I'm really glad that people are working on it, and I'm glad that the companies are working on it. So I'm not here to diss anyone. I just haven't I haven't bought a plan.
considered it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But look, it gives us the platform to explore afterlife possibilities, like thinking of the storage of human consciousness in the pineal gland and the possibility of reviving um, that consciousness is quite intriguing. It's something that I have so much interest in, right? And that's because it literally cancels the religious indoctrination of, I'm not gonna get into that, just because of my audience. But yeah, but it's a field that I would want to invest in, not for the purpose of its utility. I mean, or getting myself cryopreserved, but mostly for research, and and that's quite important because I come from a part of the world where there is so much misinformation, about life and afterlife, right? And Coronis gives us that platform, to experiment with what life is, and what afterlife is, and
I
it
always
just
say that,
gives
I
us.
mean, religious people are the original immortalists, right? Um, they want to go on living forever, and that's the whole idea. So why not do it on Earth? Why not do it? Well, I mean, it's an
Yeah,
insurance policy, right? Of immortality.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, a
yeah,
lot of the
and
world that's
and
not religious would be like, what are you talking about?
mhm,
You know?
mhm,
So, I think that science and these belief values go hand in hand.
mhm. Yeah. Look, it's amazing how we kind of, I mean, in Africa, I'm speaking from the African perspective. You know, we've sort of given interpretations to scriptures that are anti-human but pro everything else, right? It's anti, longevity, but we believe in immortality because we think it must happen. It should happen after life. Like there's a place we should go to after life, and then we can live forever in that place. And I'm asking, why can't we live forever in where we are, where we currently are? But that's, like I said, these are controversial, extremely controversial topics in Africa. You don't discuss these things. You know what I mean? It's like a taboo. you know. But we need to start having that conversation. Like we need to start having that open conversation. This person says, I was a pastor, says Charles Awuze, me, okay, that sounds quite controversial to this person, right? That someone could use that in the past tense, like I was, because it doesn't make sense why he's no longer. You know what I mean? So it kind of leads us to the conversation on personal evolution. I mean, if we are discussing the evolution of the human race, it must start with individual or personal evolution. We must evolve in our thinking, evolve in our worldview. I always say, if the where you used to think 10 years ago is how you still think today, then you haven't grown. You've just aged. You haven't grown. And hopefully in the coming months, we would create that, conversation, on personal evolution. But Liz, I think you've got something to say. Your last words to us.
I think the last thing I would say, I think that change is hard for people. And so talking about hypothetical things about maybe living for a very, very long time or what that would be like, I think it's hard for people to get their head around that. We already live longer and better through science. And as these technologies are adopted, most people in the world will want to adopt them, right? Because who wouldn't want to take a curative medicine for dementia and heart disease and cancer? And, we'll just see a massive acceptance. But if there was a way in order to get through to people, that they need to push towards this technology and that they would actually react to that and demand access, it could expedite things a lot.
Awesome. Awesome. And Mia?
Yeah, my final words. First of all, thank you to Liz and Charles because I've had such a great time. It's a privilege to be here. And thank you to everyone who took the time out to listen to us talk. And I want to say a really big thank you to Charles and Peter, especially for creating Transhuman Queen and giving an identity and a way for people to have a stake. And it doesn't matter how small it is because people buy Bitcoin because they want to get rich. People buy Transhuman Coin because they want to change the world, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. It means that by holding on to even a small amount, you become part of a community that is committed to doing better, to raising the bar for everyone, right? And it unifies us and it allows us to know what we're doing around the world. Like, right, Africa and Australia and America are friends right now because of something that you and Peter put together. And you should give yourself a pat on the back. And everyone who's a holder of it, you should feel good and you should encourage other people to come and join the mission because if everyone who holds even a little bit of it, you're part of that community. So thank you very much to all those people.
That's right. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Mia. And it's been amazing working with you too. And to Liz, you've been a huge inspiration to the movement. You don't know how much you've inspired a lot of us to get into longevity, and think longevity. And thanks. Yeah, thanks for coming on this show. I do hope we do have these conversations, regularly from time to time. And to our listeners, I just want to say thank you for watching and do keep a date with us when next we come here. Goodbye and good night.
What if I told you that you could be living longer? What if I told you that you could be living healthier? What if I told you that you could become wealthier? And the key is transhuman coin, investing in the future of humanity, improving human life with technology.